Hey everyone, welcome back to the mobile dev journey. Today we're going to start slowly building upon the plan we made last episode. If you haven't seen it yet, I strongly recommend you go check it out right now before watching this one. The playlist will be linked in the description. If we quickly check the masterfully crafted plan I made in episode 0, we can see that after creating our game idea, which is what we did last time, it's time for prototyping. Prototyping will take time and will be the subject of the next few videos. For today, the things I'd like to get done are as follows. First, create the base Unity project. Second, learn about ad implementation. And third, lay a temporary map and code some basic controls for the game. The reason I want to learn about ad implementation so early on is that I have no idea how it works. If I make the whole project and then realize at the end that I should have been building specific ad support in some places all along, we might have a problem. Anyways, the last episode was for talking, now it's time for action. I first went into Unity to create the project and ran into something unexpected. As we can see, we have the usual choices, and the one I'm looking for here is 2D mobile. This is the template I had in mind to make the game until I noticed something which I hadn't seen before: mobile monetization. This seemed to have all the same packages as the regular 2D mobile template, but with the addition of having built-in support for ads. I decided to create the project using the template to see what it was all about. After launching the project, I was prompted with a tutorial that brought me to a documentation page. However, I have the famous Gen Z attention span, and I knew I was never going to read all of the documentation. So I headed to the Unity Learn platform, which is free and very helpful, by the way. Unfortunately not sponsored. I was looking for a monetization course and quickly found one for Unity ads. After reading through it, I realized that it was much easier than anticipated, and I wasn't really going to need the monetization template. And so I remade a new project, this time with the 2D mobile template. The first thing I did once the project was loaded is create the map, which will be the main interface for the game. I then used shader graph to turn that white rectangle into something that looks a little bit more like a map. I know I could have just uploaded a picture of a map and it would have been easier, but this was simply more fun. This also helped me understand a tool that is probably going to be very useful later on. It doesn't look good for now, but that doesn't matter for the prototyping phase. Once the game a bit more fleshed out, we'll get some proper art for the map. But for now, this will do. The reason I want colors and the pattern on the map is for the next step, which is coding some controls. I want to be able to move around, but if everything's the same solid color, we're not going to be able to see if the camera moves in the right direction. With a pattern though, as you can see, we're able to see the movement of the camera. Now into the controls. Now I had to look up some documentation again on Unity's website because I wasn't familiar with how touch controls worked. Turns out that for what I needed to do, it wasn't that complicated. Or was it? I added Unity's new input system to my project and I proceeded to add the controls I needed. First, dragging a finger on the screen should pan the camera around. Now I'm gonna be honest, this took me an embarrassing amount of time to figure out how to do. Keep in mind, this is something I mentioned briefly in episode 0, but this is a learning experience. I'm not a professional game developer, so some things I do might seem stupid and may be stupid, but that's part of the learning experience, so make sure to leave constructive criticism in the comments and I'm always happy to hear it. Controls are always the part I struggle with the most in games, and this was especially true for this project. I'm not very familiar with Unity's new input system, and I had to use touch input, which I had barely used before. This made the whole process very challenging, but that's what we're here for. I ended up with this code. You can pause if you want to read it, and this is the result. I'm moving around with the mouse right now, but with a simple change this should work with the touch screen as well. Future Willy here. All the previous part has been changed later in the video because it's garbage. I did warn you that I could do some stupid stuff, and this is a prime example. Back to present, Willy. Next, I want the classic 2-finger zoom in and zoom out when the screen is pinched that basically every mobile app has. Heading into this, I realized that the new input system didn't really work for me for mobile controls, so I coded everything the good old-fashioned way. Maybe I'm missing something out, but this solution is much simpler for me and works great all the same. Here's the code I ended up with quickly. You can pause if you want to read it. Because of the input system switch, I also had to rewrite the camera dragging part, which was annoying because it took me so long to do. Fortunately, this time it wasn't anywhere as near as long as the first time, and here's what I ended up with. It's much cleaner and much easier to read in my opinion. With these two basic controls done, as you can see, we can move around our camera in a basic way like every mobile game. I am currently using my cell phone to control the screen, so unfortunately you cannot see, but believe me, everything works as intended. This is a good foundation, but I think we can still add a thing or two. I then proceeded to create a few cities, or at least what will be cities in the future. I started with a simple circle. These circles will be what we click on to access the markets of that specific city. For now, I just want them to be on there, and I want to be able to detect when the player presses one of them. Each of these cities will have to have some very similar code, because the interactions you can do are the same across all cities. But they will also need each a separate script that contains information relative to the specifics of each different cities. That's why I created a city info script and added it to the city. That way we can have a city script that manages the interaction, and that script will get its specific information from the city info script contained in each city. Once that was set up, in the city info, I put a basic name for each of the cities. At this point, I realized that having the input detection in the camera was a bit weird, so I made an input script, attached it to the scene, and moved all of the input code there. Now, in city, I made it so that if a press is detected, we get the name of the city printed in the console. And there we go. We now know that our touch is detected on a specific city. And that's pretty much all the work I wanted to do for this video. We've got some basic controls. I know this was a lot of condensed information and a lot of code, and I'll definitely be changing a bit the format in the future. I'd rather the videos be about the progress of the game instead of filming and commenting on every single little step I take. Next episode, I'd like to add the player character, which is probably just going to be a brown square, sorry in advance. And I want to also start coding simple interactions, like the player going from a city to another city. I'd also like to make some UI decisions. I will be looking in the Unity Asset Store to find some UI packs that are interesting for the prototypes. And if what I'm working on calls for it, maybe I'll even start implementing some of that UI. Now, I know I said last episode was for talking, but I've got a bit more to do. Let's go back to our gameplay elements from last time and add to this. I've been playing a lot of mobile games to gather inspiration recently, and here's what I came up with for the traveling element. First, having an energy system to restrict how many times the player can travel in a day is absolutely out of the question. This is a gimmick I absolutely despise in games. The best solution I found is cart durability. Depending on the length of the travel, the cart will lose some durability. This is great because it doesn't restrict the player at all, and it makes him think more carefully about what moves he makes. This also gives us the ability to put some cart durability upgrades in the game, giving even more progression for the player. The way it would work is that every time you travel, you lose some durability on your cart, depending on the distance. Under a certain threshold, you risk of having some failures, like breaking a wheel or losing some cargo. I feel like this would definitely be a good gameplay element, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say about it. I'm super excited to continue working on this project, so like always, if you like the video, subscribe so you don't miss the future uploads, and I am very open to suggestions and criticism. Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments, I'd love to read them. I hope you enjoyed the video, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!